to this and how we got to this point. Because everything is cumulative. Everything builds on what we're doing now. And this is really the meat of it, the thick of what we're talking about as far as the religion of Jesus. We're seeing actually how the religion of Jesus played out in the Gospels. So if you have anything, you don't understand anything, particularly what we've been doing, say that now so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page. Very important. Okay, so we're going to spend one week on the. We should be able to get through this today on the prophetic principle. I know we're going to talk about. I said we're going to talk about hell, but we're going to postpone our discussion on hell. We're going to later on because I want to get through this first. So we will get to that when we talk about states of consciousness. But first we have to understand prophetic models. So we have the three models that we began with, and now that we've learned those models, we're dealing with application of them and how they relate together. And we'll continue to explore the relationship among those models. So remember, our overarching question is, what is the rhythm in which Jesus lived his life? What is the routine in which Jesus lived his life? Because once we tap into that rhythm, we are really tapping into the power and the healing and the deep waters in which Jesus drank from. And that's what we really want. That's what we mean when we talk about the religion of Jesus. What was the rhythm which guided Jesus' life? We're going to watch a documentary that's going to transition us into our discussion on the prophetic model of emptiness, fullness, and goodness, and how that played out in Jesus' life. Remember, Jesus was a Hebrew prophet, and he was guided by certain principles. And if we don't understand the principles that he was guided by, it's very difficult to understand the religion that he lived out in his life, and why his life was so powerful, and why he expected us to not only live into the power in which he was doing, but to exceed it. He expected his disciples to live into his power and exceed that. So it's very, very, very important that we get these principles down. So, any questions? We good? Okay. I'm going to hold you to it. All right.
So much of our life is lived in a fog of automatic habitual behavior. We spend so much time on the hunt, but nothing ever quite does it for us. And we get so wrapped up in the hunt that it kind of makes us miserable.
I had everything I ever wanted. I had everything I was supposed to have. Everyone around me said, "You're successful." But really, I was miserable. There was this gaping void in my life. So I tried to fill that void the same way many people do, with stuff. Lots of stuff. I was filling the void with consumer purchases. I was spending money faster than I was earning it, attempting to buy my way to happiness. I thought I'd get there one day. Eventually, Happiness had to be somewhere just around the corner. I was living paycheck to paycheck, living for a paycheck, living for stuff. But I wasn't living at all.
At a time when people in the West are experiencing the best standard of living in history, why is it that at the same time there is such a longing for more? I think of that as a kind of biologically based delusional craving. That auto-craving is a good strategy to keep animals alive, including early human animals, in really harsh conditions. But these days, today, it creates a disconnect. You're like a puppet whose strings should be pulled by Mother Nature and evolution, reaching back tens of millions of years. We still feel restless. We still are always scratching and clawing for more.
It's why lottery winners are miserable. It's why homeowners have 3-car garages. The first car creates an exponential, awesome rush of happiness and joy and utility. The second car comes about because we tire of the first car, and as humans, we're wired to become dissatisfied. It's an addiction, really. And we are encouraged to maintain the addiction through technology and information.
American culture has, for the most part, these blinders on. There's definitely this illusion of what our lives should look like. Whether it's advertising or your Instagram or Facebook feed, it's this illusion that our lives should be perfect.
It's natural to use other people's lives and even imagined lives, you know, the confections we see in advertisements as a yardstick. You open Vanity Fair or Esquire and you see very sexy and glamorous lives, and then the projects for most people seems to become, you know, how can I get that or as close to that as I'm going to get? There can be an immense amount of dissatisfaction trying to live that way, and many of us see no alternative but to live that way.
Advertising has polluted and infiltrated culture. It's in our movies. It's in our television shows. It's in our books. It's in our doctor's offices. It's in the taxi cabs. It's in the bar sitting next to you. The person who you think you're just having an idle chat with could have been placed there by an alcohol company.
It's been a slow evolution. This is not something that just happened yesterday. This is something that has been sold to us over, say, the past 100 years, slowly but surely, by those that want to make a lot of money.
Now that's what I call a good-looking car.
They want us to believe that you really need these things.
Every year that passes, there's more stimuli, there's more pressure, there's more options, there's more media, there's more noise. And by streamlining and simplifying and just letting people know that they have the option, it's that wake-up call that is really valuable in a very critical time right now.
It got to a point in my life where I didn't know what was important anymore. Then, at some point when I was approaching 30 years old, I noticed something different about my best friend of 20-something years. Josh, he seemed happy for the first time in a really long time, like truly happy, ecstatic. But I didn't understand why, because we had both worked at the same corporation, we had both wasted our 20s climbing the corporate ladder together, and he had been just as miserable as me. So I did what any good best friend would do. I took him out to a really nice lunch I think we went to Subway. And I sat him down and I asked him a question. Why the hell are you so happy? He spent the next 20 minutes telling me about this thing called minimalism.
Before I discovered minimalism, I think my life looked like pretty much anyone else's. I had a lot of stuff. Hundreds, thousands of books. DVDs and VHSs, closets full of expensive clothes. All of these things that I brought into my life without questioning. But when I started letting go, I started feeling freer and happier and lighter. And now as a minimalist, every possession serves a purpose. It brings me joy. I have a bed and a chair and a radio, and I have some furniture in my dining room. In my kitchen, I have appliances. I don't have any excess stuff. Everything that I look around at, I have to be able to justify to myself, not to anyone else, but just justify to myself. Does this add value to my life? And if not, I have to be willing to let go. Ryan and I just finished writing a book about the last 5 years of our lives, from being these suit and tie corporate guys to minimalists. And so now we're going to get on the road for 10 months this year and promote that book, but really promote a message we really believe in, a simple living message of living more deliberately with less. Oh, I don't need a jacket. We'll see where the journey takes us.
So you presented this as a 12-minute talk, 8-minute reading. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Because I just don't want to feel rushed to talk, that's all. Right.
Ready?
I was born ready.
Nice.
Hello, thanks for coming out. My name is Ryan Nicodemus, and this is the Joshua Fields Milburn. And together we run a website called theminimalists.com. So today, Josh is going to read from our new book, but first I'm going to tell you a story about how we became the minimalists.
We've never been shut out, so as long as one person shows up,
That's all that matters.
I feel really good. We've had events where we've had 2 people show up, and that was amazing, because we got to spend time with 2 people and add value to their lives in a different way.
I'm a hugger, man. Okay. Thanks for coming out, man. John. Thanks for coming out and seeing the talk, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Did you figure your Kindle and badge in there?
Oh, yes, thank you.
From the day I was born until the 2nd grade when my parents got divorced, I had like the perfect quintessential mom and dad. When my mom left my dad, she just really went off the deep end. By junior high, we had a lot of people over at the house. And later I found out they were in there smoking crack. They would cook crack. By the 8th grade, the SWAT team was kicking in our door, busting my mother for selling drugs. It was a drug that overtook my mother. Josh had a very similar childhood to what I did.
My very first memories of my father extinguishing a cigarette on my mother's chest. Shortly after she left my father, she started drinking. It was my biggest fear that I was going to get taken away from her. When she was sober, she was a phenomenal mother. I think she kind of felt trapped. My mom always complained about money. She didn't have any money.
I remember being poor growing up. And I remember thinking, when I graduate high school, I want to start on a path that is going to take me somewhere other than a struggle. We're currently on our way to NPR for a radio interview. Those are our peeps. That's our demographic.
Howdy.
Looking for Reed Daniels.
I think so, yes.
The minimalist.
We are
Yes.
indeed.
How are you?
I'm Scott.
I'm Ryan. I'm a hugger, man.
Oh,
Nice to meet you.
oh, thanks for filming too.
Joshua.
Right.
I think my light bulb moment is when I was showing my guys how to sell cell phones to a 5-year-old. I was like, what am I doing? This mentality of getting a better promotion, getting a better house, getting a better car, getting a bigger paycheck, being able to buy more expensive bar tabs. And to do that, I had to sell cell phones to 5-year-olds.
There's a template out there, you call it the American dream or keeping up with the Joneses or whatever. That's just a template, it's not the template. And once we realize that, I think we can create our own template that works just for us.
The American dream has a long history. It started out as a concept that was really more about opportunity. The U.S. is a land of opportunity where somebody could start out at the bottom, work hard, and do well. There's no question that what it means to have made it or to have achieved the American dream in the United States has increased tremendously in material terms. $100,000 a year plus kind of income became more and more an aspirational norm across the society because that's what's portrayed as normal on TV. A 6-figure income. Beginning from about the mid-1990s, Americans went on a buying spree that was probably unprecedented in human history. And a lot of it had to do with the cheapness of products coming mostly from China. Whether we're talking about fashion, electronics, all types of household goods.
So stuff's cheaper, but it's also more available. You can order stuff 24 hours online, and there are big box stores. We ended up accumulating a lot more stuff. So much so that even though we have about 3 times the space per person than we used to in the 50s, so a lot more space, we've got so much stuff, we need space on top of that, and so there's a 2.2 billion square foot personal storage industry, which is ludicrous.
So you have people living in these enormous homes. And if you really look at it, people don't use the space that they have. Someone did a study and they showed a heat map of where people traveled inside their homes over the course of a normal day. It was a family of 4 and they were in a very average home. And what they found is that people used about maybe 40% of their space. Nobody used the dining room. No one used the living room. There was a big, porch. No one used the porch. I'm not saying this is the way everyone lives. Some people use dining rooms, but it creates this big vacuum that you have to fill. So people are throwing all this crap into their homes that they don't need.
We're living our life depending on the space we've got rather than creating our space to fit our lives. It's so easy to go wrong. And you wind up with 3 dining tables in the same house. Well, you gotta run pretty fast to eat at 3 tables at the same meal. Nothing is more responsible than living in the smallest space you possibly can.
We've probably sold or donated, I'd say at least 90% of our stuff. I mean, you can't bring all your stuff into a tiny house. I was commuting about 2 hours a day and then sitting in a cubicle for 10 to 12 hours a day. I had gained a lot of weight. I was unhappy. And I was kind of like, what's wrong with me? I should be happy. I've got all this stuff. Nice home, great husband. And Logan was like, well, you know, you could probably quit your job if we simplified and moved into a smaller apartment. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't want to get rid of my stuff. I found a YouTube video, saw the tiny houses, and I was hooked. Hi, Earl. What's up, dude? I think the biggest thing for me, at least in the beginning, was the financial side of things. When we looked at our budget and the numbers, I was like, well, let's just give it a go. If I hate a smaller apartment, we can always upsize.
I think there's this element of affordability, simplicity, and sustainability that just makes tiny houses seem like the perfect solution to a problem we haven't yet figured out, which is how do we go from working all throughout a lifetime to enjoying a lifetime with a bit of work here and there. For a long time, when people were looking to buy their first house, they looked at their budget and they said, how much money do I have to spend? Oh, I have $500,000. Let me buy whatever $500,000 can get me. And the big mistake there was that these individuals didn't have $500,000. They had a loan that would guarantee them that amount. And of course, after a few years of people buying houses that they weren't actually buying, they were just hoping to buy someday, the entire housing market collapsed.
We're down 1.7% here, a loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
This could be the most serious recession in decades. And that means life, as most Americans know it, is about to change, in some cases dramatically.
I think where that has left us in the wake of a recession is with a really, really strong appeal to buying a house outright.
The vision that really came out of Life Ed is just like, hey, I think we got to take a step back here.
We're very much a mission-based company. The mission being to do more with us.
So the Life Edited prototype apartment started with me buying a place, 420 square feet in New York, and coming up with a really aggressive program. What I was asking for was a lot. Live at home for a couple, be able to have a sit-down dinner for 10 or 12, be able to have guests over in a civil manner, and be able to work at home with some sort of standing desk. Very quickly, I realized that small space made so much sense environmentally, but it also made sense on many other levels.
One of the things that we really want to do is design homes around A, how people live, and B, what's truly important, creating more social homes, homes that actually bring people closer together.
It was kind of an incredible experience because going from the 1,200 square foot space, I had never felt more calm in my life. There was less stuff to think about, our overhead was lower. This is when I first started to say, this Life Edited thing, this philosophy, maybe there's something to it.
A beautiful future for us would be to do development that does really well financially, has a much lower footprint, and have lots of developers copy what we're doing. And so that it really spreads and we start to change how we live as Americans and just change this desire for the bigger is better philosophy.
I think we've only begun to re-examine what it means to be successful in life. It's no longer that white picket fence, it's no longer that McMansion. I think that people are beginning to recognize that they've maybe been tricked and that they maybe have more agency over their options than they once thought they did.
there's there was a theological theme in there that started from the very beginning. Actually, there's a lot of points in there that I'm sure we could, but sticking with the model, because we can dissect that for a couple of days. But sticking with the model, where what did you notice what he said at the very beginning? The first guy that began speaking, what did he say at the very beginning? That there was a void. Exactly. There was a void in his life. Okay, so there's a void. We've been talking about the void, right? Yeah. Okay, so there was a void in his life, and what did he do when he realized there was a void? He tried to fill it, right? Yeah. Which is the exact opposite of the religion of Jesus. Think about this. The whole process, and we talked about this last week, the whole process is, okay, out of the mystery of God, out of the unknowability of God, it comes creative activity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, created on 7 is the day of rest. But 7 means that point of rest, of stillness, of letting go. And then we have Sabbath allows us to enter into the void. And when we enter into the mystery, the unknowability, the magnitude of the great I am, and coming out of that, we are then able to give life through our words, through our actions, through everything that we do. Now, what he was doing was, and what he was saying was, I realized there was a void, and I saw the void, and I was throwing stuff in the void so the void would go away. Think about that from what we've been talking about. I'm standing apart back from the void, throwing stuff into it, hoping that it will go away so I will feel better. But in the religion of Jesus, the whole point of it is you enter into the emptiness, you enter into the darkness, you enter into the uncertainty. And by entering into the great unknown, you become transformed. So it's completely counterintuitive to basically, the whole rhythm in which we are kind of pushed into, particularly in a hyper consumeristic type of culture that we live in. And in all of our whole mode is, I'm going to give you this product, I'm going to give you this thing, I'm going to give you this experience to feel the void, so it will go away. But it never goes away. Because we talked about this, we enter into the void, we enter into the mystery, we enter into the unknown, and that entrance, once we rest, once we surrender, once we let go, entering into that emptiness is the exact thing which transforms us, not getting rid of it. You with me? Yeah. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay. So I thought that was so powerful from this model, from the Genesis model, but also from the model that we're going to talk about, the prophetic model, is the notion of in order to go deeper in the things of God, there has to be an emptying process. There has to be a process in which I am emptying myself in a physical way, in a social way, in a soulish way, from the body, soul, and the spirit, and even in a spiritual way. So that emptying on different levels in me, and as a result of being empty, I allow myself to be empty so that I can prepare myself to be full of the things of God. So there has to be, if our whole life is about filling ourselves up with stuff, with experiences, with commodities, we're moving further and further away from the road that we need to take in order to be transformed. So we're going in the exact opposite. The more stuff we accumulate, it's better in the sense of the more we adopt a consumeristic mentality of trying to fill ourselves up, trying to fill the void up, the further away we're getting away from. I'm not even talking about right or wrong. Forget this is America. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you're not hurting nobody. So it's your world, it's your life. But you cannot argue. The more we try to fill ourselves up with things, the further and further we're getting away from the rhythm in which Jesus actually lived his life. Now that's you can't dispute that. And we're going to talk about that emptying process and how that lived out in Jesus' life. So we have the void, we have the emptiness, the mystery of God, and we go, we rest, we still, we surrender, and we enter into that void. And as a result of entering into that void, we come out of that void and able to speak words of life, to make gestures of life, to live a transformative life. And then once we do that, we go back into rest, stillness, surrender, letting go, and enter back into this. And this is the rhythm in which Jesus lived his life, Hebraic rhythm in which he lived his life from the Genesis model. So let's review the prophetic principles. Remember, Jesus was first and foremost a Hebrew prophet. He was a Hebrew prophet, and in order to understand his rhythm, we have to understand Hebraic tradition, which birthed him, and the culture in which he came out of. And from that lens, we interpret and we look at everything after that. So the first prophetic principle that we talked about was, and the prophetic principle of goodness. We must be engaged in the activity of the Creator before entering into the Sabbath, doing those things which we were commanded to do, doing those things which we know are right, which are just, which are loving. So, the basic sense of righteousness, of justice. The prophets always talked about the sacrifices are canceled out, the worship is canceled out if we're willfully, in disobedience to what we're supposed to be doing in the eyes of God. And for those who had who took the class on spiritual warfare and talked about biblical prayer, in biblical prayer, there's certain prophetic laws, there's certain laws that have to be in place before the prayer is shama, before the prayer is heard. Now that's not a conception of prayer that many of us want to embrace, but in the biblical conception of prayer, it was believed that there had to be a certain willingness to face God in order to move in God's direction if the prayer was going to be heard. And so we talked about that, in a previous class. So if you wanted more on that, I can give you slides on that. So the first principle is the principle of goodness. The second principle is the principle of emptiness. In order to be a prophet is one who totally hollows himself, emptying himself of all ego, so that, like an empty pipe, he makes himself a channel for the divine spirit. So we want to go through an emptying process, whether that be fasting or prayer. Prayer is the process of aligning our spirits with God's spirit, meditation, worship, whatever it may be, service, in which we're emptying ourselves out, clearing ourselves out, so that the Spirit of God moves through us. So we empty ourselves out. We become empty so that we can become full. We become empty so that we can become full. So indications of fullness in the scriptures, and these are all old slides. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. The word of the Lord came. These are all indications that the emptying process was done, and as a result of it being done, I'm now open. I can receive. I have the capacity to receive the Spirit of God inside of me. God often used the last and the least because they oftentimes are empty. David, Samuel, Saul, Ruth, Gideon, Moses, Joseph. We see that God uses those people who have allowed themselves. God fills the space up when we create space for God to dwell and invite God's Spirit in us. So we don't want to stay empty and we don't want to stay full. We want to be in this cycle of emptying ourselves out, allowing the Spirit to flow through us, becoming empty again, allowing the Spirit to come through us. But we want to get, it's a rhythm. So we're not seeking to be blank. We're not seeking to be empty, but we're seeking to be in a rhythm of emptiness and fullness, and going in that cycle. You still with me? Yes. Okay. So now let's look at some biblical examples of this. Let's talk about physical emptiness, physical fullness and emptiness. In the scriptures, there was in the worldview in which Jesus was coming out of, there was a physical sense of emptiness and fullness in reference to particularly demon possession. So let's look at a couple of scriptures in reference to this. So let's turn to Matthew 15. Right, you're right. And we're gonna be jumping a little bit today. Okay, so we'll look at something very, very tangible, something very, very physical. So who wants to read that 32 to 39? Somebody just go.
Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have had nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. His disciples answered, where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd? How many loaves do you have, Jesus asked. 7, they replied, and a few small fish. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples. And they in turn to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterwards, the disciples picked up 7 baskets full of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate were 4,000, besides women and children. After Jesus had sent the crowd away, he got into the boat and went to the vicinity of Magdala.
Good. So we see in a very literal way, and we see this is a theme. This is a theme throughout the ministry of Jesus, is that Jesus never wants to allow people to leave him empty. In a physical sense, I'm talking about physically, we see this principle throughout. So we look at, he not only teaches them, but he said, no, I don't want to send them away empty, and we're going to talk about why that is. So that's the first example I'm going to use. Let's look at Luke 5. Turn to Luke 5. Who wants to read that 12 through 16?
Once when he was in one of the cities, there was a man covered with leprosy. But when he saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground and begged him, Lord, if you choose me, you can make me clean. Then Jesus stretched out his hand, touched him, and said, I do choose. Be made clean. Immediately the leprosy left him, and he ordered him to tell no one. Go, he said, and show yourself to the priest. And as Moses commanded, make an offering for your cleansing for a testimony to them. But now, more than ever, the word about Jesus spread abroad. Many crowds were gathered to hear him and to be cured of their diseases. But he would withdraw to deserted places and pray.
Okay, we already talked about the retreat, the healing, the doing, creative activity, Sabbath, rest, returning back to the void of God, and then going out healing and preaching again. But look, so he was literally full of leprosy. He was filled up. He was filled up with this disease. And I'm speaking in the mindset and in the understanding in which the people of Jesus' time would have understood diseases. So this man was filled up with this disease. He was full of this disease, and Jesus literally cleans him. He empties him out of disease. And you look at what Jesus does, is you see this almost to a T, is that it's always written, or sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's implicit, but Jesus always gives them a command, gives them something to do, gives them something to follow. He never sends them away and just heals them and then sends them away empty. So we see that process of emptying out, so the process of emptying out and then once you've been emptied out of whatever you are, whatever you're filled up with, then the filling up, the commandment, doing something and getting on the path in which he's trying to lead people to the kingdom of God, which we'll talk about the states of conscience beginning next week. But this pattern is emerging of not wanting to send people away empty. And we're going to talk about why that's so important. Let's look at Luke 4. Luke 4. Who wants to read that one? 31 through 37.
And he came down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and taught them on the Sabbath days. And they were astonished at his doctrine, for his word was with power. And in the synagogue there was a man which had a spirit of unclean devil, and cried out with a loud voice, saying, Let us alone. What have we to do with thee, thou Jesus of Nazareth? Art thou come to destroy us? I know thee who thou art, the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, Hold thy peace, and come out of him. And when the devil had thrown him in the midst, he came out of him, and hurt him not. And they were all amazed, and spake among themselves, saying, What a word is this? For with authority and power he commanded the unclean spirits, and they come out. And the fame of him went out into every place of the country round about.
So once again, we talk about demon possession. The mindset was the demon is something physical, and it's not just spiritual, but it's something physical that is in this person, which needs to be emptied out. There's something in this person that needs to be emptied out. So it's the process of Jesus going, and not just going to this person and emptying something out of this person. And the emptiness and fullness is connected. So let's look at this last one, Luke, before I give you your assignment, Luke 11. And this really crystallizes it in a lot of ways. Luke 11, 24 through 26.
When an evil spirit goes out of a person, it travels over dry country looking for a place to rest. If it can't find one, it says to itself, I will go back to my house. So it goes back and finds the house clean and all fixed up. Then it goes out and brings 7 other spirits even worse than itself, and they come and live there. So when it's all over, the person is in worse shape than it was in the beginning.
That's why we don't stay empty. That's why we don't stay empty. So you see that that's an example of, and this is in the concept of Jesus' teaching, but that's an example of an incomplete pattern. So we have the getting the order. I'm going to get my life right. I'm going to get all the bad activity, get all the negativity out of my life, and I'm just going to be straight, and I'm going to be in order. And the house is in order, but you stay in that process. You stay empty, and what happens is the demons come back, and they come back. So our goal, don't get me wrong, the goal is not emptiness. The goal is to get into the cycle of living a righteous life, of emptying out those things, of going through the emptying process of fasting, of meditation, of prayer, of worship, service, so forth. So that emptying process, creating more and more room for God's Spirit and inviting God's Spirit in us. So being full of God's Spirit, not staying in a perpetual state of emptiness. Because if we just stay empty, try to just get our lives right together on ourselves, try to do it our own way, that's when we get in trouble. We're incomplete. So goodness, emptiness, fullness. Now, in the passage it talks about the demons. Once the demon goes out, the demons are roaming over a waterless place. It was believed that demons lived in the desert. It was believed that demons resided in arid places. So when you talk about, at the end of this class, we're going to talk about the monks and how in the 4th century there were monks that went to the desert to pray. they believed that they were blessing the world because they were going to the desert to fight. Because they were going to the desert to fight all the demons in the desert and basically warding them off from going into the cities. That's what they believed. So it was this process of, I'm going to offer my life, I'm going to sacrifice my life, I'm going to put myself. Think about, what was the first place the Spirit told Jesus to go to? The desert, the wilderness. That's where the demons were. And that's where Satan tempted him. So you see, the desert is the place of, it was believed the desert was the place of the demons. The desert was the place of temptation. The desert was the place of the struggle. But the struggle in and of itself is what purified you, is what made you deeper, what made you stronger. And when you came out of the desert, you were a whole different person. So that was the whole mentality. So at the end of the class, we'll look at the 3rd, the 4th century. You would see sometimes popes and bishops and priests would go to the desert and consult with these people, and some of them were illiterate. Some of them couldn't even read, because it was believed that they were on the spiritual forefront and basically holding the whole kingdom together by their constant state of prayers and their constant states of fortitude, day in and day out. So this process of emptiness, of the battle it takes to become empty was very, very prevalent in the consciousness of Jesus and in the consciousness of the people that were around him. So this is what I want you to do. We'll return to this, but I want us to return back to the scripture that we looked at last week. I want you to spend, I'm going to give you 6 minutes on Mark 14, 32 to 36. Now this is what I want you to interpret that scripture based on the prophetic model. Based on the prophetic model, the cycle of goodness, emptiness, fullness. Last week we looked at that, we interpreted that scripture based on the Genesis model. This week I want you to look at that and interpret it in the sense of the prophetic model.
Fine there.
Remember the tripartite for this. Remember that's going to help with this. Remember the tripartite. Okay? The body, the soul, the spirit. The body, the soul, the spirit.
That's what I, 30, or 34, where you just, yeah, that's how I saw it. If you look at the mind, soul, spirit, right? Or the goodness, emptiness, right? Act of prayer, maybe? Yeah, my soul short.